After yet another 2-week hiatus, the CBB Central podcast is back. Our apologies for that one. Just another time when we're all super busy. And I was gone last weekend at Purdue with women's basketball. We were going to record on Monday, Brad. I got called into work at the last second. We're going to record Thursday. Something came up. We're finally back here on Sunday. We're less than a week until March 1st. How unbelievable is that to you, Brad?
It's absolutely insane. But the NCAA tournament's a week later this year, right? So we get an extra week of college basketball, which I did not realize going in. But honestly, I kind of want this regular season to be done with and just get on with conference tournaments. I know I'll be regretting that in August, saying that, but it's just it feels like I'm watching the same Big Ten games over and over. It's like no matter if it's Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa, Wisconsin, it just feels like it's like the same game.
Yeah. I tweeted just now that I feel like I've watched a ton of Rutgers this year. I've watched an insane amount of Rutgers for a team that's 6-11 in the Big Ten now, and they're fun. They play a lot of close games. Steve Pikiell's got them going. They might make the NIT if they can finish strong. But the amount of Rutgers I've watched this year is just kind of strange. I don't really know why that's the case, but there's just a few teams that I always just wind up watching. And is there a team like that for you that you just kind of stuck in a rut other than these Big Ten battles you keep watching?
It's pretty much every Big East team except for Georgetown. I feel like that's the team I've watched the least in the Big East. DePaul recently too, and then in the Big Ten, feels like I've watched everybody except for maybe. I've seen a ton of Purdue recently, ton of Michigan State. I guess Minnesota, but I watched a ton of them early in the season. But I really enjoyed the kind of one-off Big Ten game on a Friday night, and we saw Iowa end Indiana's season, and Jordan Bohannon, after killing Northwestern, he goes and buries Indiana with a ton of crazy threes. And then also on Purdue, I mean, we know that people's, at least the general college basketball fan, the thing that they hate most about bubble teams is that they have a ton of losses and the record doesn't look pretty. So they must be loving Purdue because they ended Nebraska and Indiana, and those were close games that could have given both those teams some more life, and Purdue really put a stop to that.
Yeah, both Nebraska and Indiana have just been given chance after chance and just can't quite find it. I mean, that Purdue game for Indiana was right there for the taking. Nebraska had the lead yesterday. I have watched both of those teams a lot in the last 2 weeks, especially Indiana, who played a lot of close games. Indiana's starting to turn the corner. I think if they played the way they have the last 2 ball games, and really 4 of the last 5, 6 of the last 7, or no, 5 of the last 6. Michigan State, Iowa, Ohio State. They had the stinker against Minnesota, and then close games again against Purdue and Iowa. If they played like that earlier in the season, when they lost at Northwestern, when they lost at home by 15 in Nebraska, that 2-point road loss or 3-point road loss at Maryland, there's no bad losses on there. They fought a lot of close games. They haven't won them. And that's got to be really frustrating. I mean, Nebraska just doesn't look the part right now, but they nearly just grinded out a win against Purdue. They're done. Tim Miles is done, unfortunately. I think he's a good guy. He just didn't recruit enough. We don't have either of those teams, I believe, on our bubble list, but that's the plan for the podcast today, is just to go through the bubble. So Brad has been good enough to put together a list of 30 teams that he sees as the general bubble. We're going to put 15 of those teams in, 15 out, with no Indiana, no Nebraska. So was there any ideas as to how you put this together exactly, Brad? I mean, I'm not saying those teams should be in. Excuse me, Nebraska and Indiana are both in. I'm really just dumb. But what was the reason? What was the reasoning behind how you built this 30 teams?
So basically, I went on to Bracketville's bracketology. I think he's the highest rated bracketology. I think he goes the most in depth. See, it seems like he does the best in terms of the kind of research and the objectivity, and his results show that he's year in year out he's one of the top rated bracketologists. So I went there, and so I just counted so first I listed every team that was conceivably a bubble team, and I got to 30, and then I went to his bracketology and counted how many of those teams were in. it was exactly 15. So 15 of these 30 are going to be in, 15 are going to be out. The reason why I included Indiana and Nebraska is because I mean, technically they're not done with the games they have left. Like if they won out, or if they won 3 or maybe even 2, maybe they're on the interesting discussion list. But certainly they haven't played well enough, to actually consider that. But I felt probably should include them.
Yeah, I mean, right now they are. If they can get over, if either team can get over 500, especially Indiana. My thing has always been if Indiana can finish the season over 500, then they're going to probably dance because they have so many good to great wins that it may not matter with how weak the bubble is. The problem is that at this point, I mean, they're not going to finish over 500. They're 13-14. They have Wisconsin, Michigan State, at Illinois, at Rutgers. So they have to win probably 3 or 4 of those games or make a run in the Big Ten tournament. I don't think that's going to happen. So at this point, it's going to be really tough. But if they get over 500, I think they have a pretty good shot.
Yeah, because they need to get over 500 to be considered, I think.
Yes.
But also, if they were to get over 500, they would add wins that would, like if they mathematically get over 500, they are adding wins that are going to bolster an already strong resume. So Indiana is still in discussion. I don't think that they have a true bad loss either. Nebraska, they're one of these teams that got elevated based on the early season and preseason perceptions of the teams that they beat that turned out to be wrong. Like the Seton Hall win looked better in end of December than it does now. At Clemson looked a lot better when it happened than it does now. Home Creighton, same sort of thing. Oklahoma State has completely fallen off. And then probably at the time, what we thought was their kind of resume, like the best win on this resume would be at Indiana. So we know that hasn't aged well either. Then I guess Minnesota. I mean, so there's really nothing there, right? They haven't beaten a surefire tournament team. The best team that they've beaten is Seton Hall.
They've just avoided bad losses, and we can go into these teams more in depth once we're finally putting these teams 15 in and 15 out. But I mean, Nebraska's whole resume is we don't have any terrible losses, and we play in the best conference in college basketball, so we get a bunch of random quadrant 1 wins. I don't know on paper how many. I'm trying to pull up their team sheet right now. Let's see if I can get that. But they have a few quadrant 1 wins, which is just enough for them to hang around on the periphery of the bubble. They just flat out don't look the part either. Even if they got to a number that of wins and quality wins that is reasonable, I think the committee should leave them out because they don't look the part without Copeland. They've really fallen off. They're a worse team now than they were in November and December when they were getting some of those okay wins. So I think they have almost no shot.
Yeah, and then I mean, if you compare Nebraska this season to a couple teams in past years who were in similar situations, you look at Clemson last year, they lose Dante Grantham around the same time. Grantham was probably their best player. Copeland is probably Nebraska's 3rd best player. But even though Clemson was noticeably worse, they were still able to tread water, and they still made the Sweet 16. They were still a good team. Then you have Creighton 2 years ago with Mo Watson. They were able to tread water better than Nebraska. Ended up, I think, as a 6, and they lost to URI in the first round. So they were obviously worse, losing their best or second best player, but they were able to tread water. And then Creighton last year losing Krompel, who was their 3rd best player. That's, I think, a very equal parallel. They end up treading water, getting an 8 seed, losing to Kansas State in the first round, getting blown out in the first round by Kansas State. So again, whenever these teams lose a player of that caliber, they're always worse. But those teams could tread water because they had at least guys that they could turn to off the bench. Whether it's Amir Sims and David Skara, or Davion Mins, or Jacob Epperson, guys who are they were at least able to keep the engine going. But when Nebraska's lack of depth, throwing in guys like Tanner Borkart or Nana Akenton for more minutes just really collapsed this team.
Yeah, one last thing I promise on Nebraska before we move on. Nebraska is 46th in the net as of this morning, they're 116th in RPI. This team at 2-10 against quadrant one, they have no horrible losses, and 116 in the RPI. They're basically Northwestern's resume last year at this point. Northwestern was like 15-13. They lost out and went 15-17. I think was the final record on the season. Well, they lost like out like they're like 15-12 and they lost out. The same point holds where like if like they were nowhere close to the bubble for the entire month. Northwestern was they beat Michigan. There was like a tiny breath of hope on like February 7th, and then after that they didn't do anything. Like just because of the net, and really mostly because they blew out Creighton, they blew out Seton Hall, they blew out Oklahoma State, all 3 quadrant 2 games, and they won in absurdly efficient fashion against Southeastern Louisiana, 87-35, Mississippi Valley State, 106-37. Their net is top 50, which is the only reason why they're still in. And like, I guess the question is, the big thing we talked about preseason and really, in the early part of non-conference play into really the new was the net going to tank all these high major teams for all these losses while mid-majors spiked? And it seems like the mid-majors who are efficient are rising, but the high major teams are just plateauing by losing to other high major teams. Like Nebraska isn't dropping like a stone because they're losing every single game. Same with Indiana. Even Northwestern is still like top 80, which is just like far too high right now. They're terrible. Like it's really interesting to me that the net is like it's not like hurting the high majors, but it's helping the mid majors, I think, which I'm okay with, maybe.
It's kind of similar to like KenPom in the sense it's like I don't know how this works. Like, why is Auburn still 17th in KenPom? I was looking through KenPom earlier, and there was a couple just like why? Like I don't understand. Like I obviously understand it's based on efficiency, but the kind of other factors, it feels like in KenPom that there's very little movement. You mentioned about the plateauing, and then with the net, it feels like that they changed the formula at some point. Right, because I mean, a lot was being made about it's taking so long to update. Like KenPom can update instantaneously. The net, it takes a day, sometimes 2 days for them to get the information out. And if it was just a formula, you'd think that the data is inserted and then boom, you have your net for today. But the guy David Warlock, he got very defensive when someone suggested that there was foul play involved. But I mean, it would make sense. What are they doing like with all this time? Like it's not that much data, right? There's 350 teams. Databases have like millions and millions or like hundreds of millions of records sometimes, and it can move a lot faster. So it feels like that there is some manual manipulation. I think maybe after non-conference play they added like a strength of schedule component or some sort of pivot.
Yeah, they keep blaming the server issues, which like I'm fine with, but like there's no reason for them to be secretive with this formula. Like why wouldn't they just put it out there so the teams know what it is and so fans know what it is? Like there's no reason for it to be proprietary. You're giving out the information anyway. It's not like KenPom where it's a subscription service and like there's like a goal of making money at the end. The NCAA is not trying to make money off the net. Like it just seems dumb to me unless there's a reason to like hide it and be able to adjust it. And, we'll see. They're going to say that's nothing there. I mean, I have no reason not to believe them other than that it doesn't make sense that they're not putting it out there. So, yeah, but that's weird. But I think it's a little better than the RPI, so I'm going to take it.
And then they keep on bringing up that they partnered with Google. So your partnership with Google's like the most powerful internet thing in the world, and they can't provide like a database or something that can update quicker, so something's fishy. But in terms of Nebraska, I mean, I think we already moved them out. I already updated the spreadsheet with that. So
I see that. Yes. So yeah, I don't think they're making it unless. I mean, like the thing is, if they won their next 3, they're like a lock. But they're just not going to win their next 3. So
yes, that's at Michigan, at Michigan State, and then home Iowa.
Even if they won 2 of 3, they're in, right? Or at least close.
Yeah, I think that they would be close. Probably in. Yeah, because I mean, a win like at Michigan or at Michigan State, that's going to elevate you a couple seed lines, and that's going to be such a strong differentiator.
Yeah, I mean that said, I just don't see it. I don't think you do either. So I'm fine with chalking them up in the out, and that's kind of the point of this. Is like we're looking at schedules and deciding who's going to make a run through them. So that said, we have Nebraska as our first team eliminated, even though I don't think they're the strongest out I have on this list. But anyway, let's move on. Let's pick a team that we both think is like pretty safely in the field. I think for me, my most safe team that you have on the spreadsheet is I'm going to go St. John's here. And I mean, they may not be your most safe team, but I think we both would agree that they're safe, despite some of the bad losses and the games where just flat out St. John's has not showed up. They have a ton of really good wins, and still based on everything we know about the committee really values good wins, and they have the 2 wins over Marquette. They have the Villanova win. They beat VCU on a neutral court. They have a lot of really nice wins that should keep them in, despite their weak net, despite their some negative losses. None of the losses are horrible. None of them are good. So I think they're pretty safely in my field.
Yeah, the thing with St. John's is that VCU win was the big one, because like you can point to their weak strength of schedule, but the fact that they have like a legitimate quality win as a part of the non-conference, I think that's going to be enough to kind of negate the weak strength of schedule talk. And then I think that they need one more win. So their next 3 games: Xavier, at DePaul, at Xavier. Now Xavier is actually good now, right? Which poses a problem in the sense that it'll be harder for them to win. And Xavier is a very big team, and I know that St. John's struggled a lot with Nate Watson and Alpha Diallo on Providence with their size. So that that's a matchup problem too. But the fact that Xavier is better means losing to them won't hurt as much. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there for St. John's. Harder to get the win, but if they lose, it won't matter as much. That being said, I think that they definitely get 2 of these 3 games, which would absolutely lock them in.
I mean, they're going to struggle with DePaul size, but I'm not even sure that they need any wins. Like, even if they're 8-10 and losing the first game of the conference tournament, I'm fairly solid that a team that's currently they're 6-4 against Quadrant 1 right now. They would probably wind up at like 6-6 if they lost that game. They'd still have an overall winning record against Quadrants 1 and 2. Their worst loss would be at home to DePaul. I think they'd be fine.
And that home DePaul was without Shamori Pons, which we don't know exactly how the committee takes that. Then the home Providence one was without Mustafa Heron. So yeah, I think St. John's is probably in. I think that they're probably the safest. I guess the next one for me would be Wofford. Their best wins are obviously in conference, which would be the main knock against them if the committee has this prejudice against mid-major. They might not count those Quadrant 1 wins the same. But the biggest thing for me with Wofford is that they don't have any bad losses. Right, all 4 of their losses were to NCAA tournament teams, and I think 3 of those were on the road. It's not like Belmont, who has the Green Bay loss. This is a very clean resume, a team that could even get to like the 7 seed line depending on what happens around them. And then in their conference tournament, they have games that they could lose and it wouldn't be a bad loss. So I think Wofford is in a really nice spot.
Yeah, I think they're pretty much in at this point. If they win their next 2, I think they're virtually in. If they beat Chattanooga and Stanford on the road, they're in because, like you said, they have no bad losses. They have some Quadrant 1 wins. The South Carolina win may not look great numbers wise, but South Carolina's in the next 4 out right now for Lenardi. Like, they're fighting into the mix, which I still think is crazy. Like, I don't think they're an NCAA tournament team, but they're winning a lot of basketball games in SEC play in a very good conference, and that wins aging nicely. The numbers love them. They're top 20 in net right now. Just not a lot to dislike about this resume. Not a lot for the committee to poke holes at. They're going to go undefeated if they win those 2 games in a top 10 conference. if a team that goes undefeated in a top 10 conference that has no bad losses on their resume doesn't make the NCAA tournament, I will legitimately riot. Like, I just don't know how I can like live in a society where that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that will have to worry. I remember, a few years ago, Siena was an 8 seed, Old Dominion was an 8 seed. So it's been done. Just the one thing I wanted to mention with Wofford, I don't even remember what it was. So let's just move on.
All right, yeah. I mean,
there was something, but
I watched the game. I was very impressed. I got a little of that game. Let's see. Next team that I feel very good about right now, I think, is Texas. I think they're going to group in similarly to St. John's in that they're just going to have some really great wins and no real terrible losses. I mean, the Radford loss isn't good, but the Providence loss at home also isn't great. But, they have the North Carolina win in the non-conference. They beat Arkansas on a neutral. They beat Kansas State on the road, which right now looks like an incredibly good win. They beat, they have some other, solid games. They have the win over Kansas at home, which is a top 20 win. I think they're fine. I mean, even if they, other than losing their next 5 games and finishing under 500, that's like their biggest concern, right? Is like they lose the Final Four and then they lose the first game of the conference tournament, they don't get it. Like, as long as they're over 500, I think they're in.
Yeah, and that was another team I was trying to think of earlier that it's still like 27 in KenPom despite losing a bunch of games. They were surprisingly competitive with Oklahoma without Kerwin Roach. So I mean that was a pretty good sign for them. And then the only concern with Texas would be the quantity of losses, but this bubble is at a point where it might just be, like there's no one else, like we need to take them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't love this Texas team. I just think they're like pretty clearly a tournament team right now. They have enough conference wins. They have enough total wins. They should be fine.
The team that I will take. Oh, this is what I forgot that I wanted to say earlier. In the ACC and the SEC, where there's a very clear tiered system, right? Where there's a clear top, a tier middle, a clear middle, and a clear bottom. It's so easy to get to like 10-8 or 11-7 because you can just beat up on the bottom. Like, the SEC has like a 5 or 6 team bottom, so a team like South Carolina, if they just take care of business and they get like a fortunate schedule where with the unbalanced schedule, maybe they get a couple teams on the bottom more than once. You can quite quickly get to 10 or 11 conference wins, even if you're a middle of the pack team that's vastly inferior to the teams at the top. So that's just kind of another reason why conference record can't play a role in anything regarding NCAA tournament selection or seeding. That if the better your bottom is, probably the worst conference records you're going to have. We're going to see that with the Big Ten, where like Ohio State could finish with a sub 500 record, which looked unthinkable a few months ago. But for the team, I think is safe. I'm going to go with TCU. Their resume isn't super safe, but they're playing at a level that I think that they'll be fine. The loss to Kansas was one that could have put them over the edge, but they have a sweep of Iowa State. And then coming up, they have Texas Tech and Kansas State at home, which would be great opportunities. At West Virginia is one that they have to win, and then at Texas, that's a coin flip game for me. So I think TCU with a winnable ending schedule that still allows them a chance to build their record, and then kind of the position that they're in right now, I think that they're pretty safe.
Their resume is like incredibly reliant on Iowa State. I would argue like their 2 best wins all year are Iowa State. Once at home, once on the road. They have the Florida win at home, which is another bubble team they beat. They beat Texas at home. I just really dislike their resume. Baylor at home. They did nothing in the non-conference. The biggest thing they did in the non-conference was beat USC on, I believe, a neutral. Yeah, they beat USC on a neutral, and they won Diamond Head, and they beat Fresno at home. That's their resume in the non-conference. Actually, they lost to Lipscomb. Yeah, I mean, I don't love their resume. I think if they win 2 more games, one in the regular season, one in the regular season, one in the conference tournament, or 2 in the regular season, they're probably okay. But it's kind of a begrudging one for me, just because like the bubble stinks.
Yeah, I mean they've beaten 5 NCAA tournament teams, so I think that's going to be enough, right? Because they have Iowa State twice, they have Florida, Texas, and Baylor. So even though some of those were at home, I think comparatively, I think that's going to be enough.
Yeah, they should be fine. I would tend to agree. Let's move on to another team that we both may or may not like. I'm gonna throw VCU out here. I think VCU is in like a sneaky excellent position. They're 21-6, 12-2 in the A10. They don't really have any horrible losses. I mean, at Rhode Island isn't very good. Home to Charleston isn't great. But I mean, otherwise, I think where they lack is the high level wins. But they have the road win at Texas. They have the win over Hofstra. That's a good win at home. That's Q2. They beat Temple on a neutral. That's a solid win as well. And then on conference, and then in conference play, they've just kind of eaten up. And so I think regardless of what they do in the conference tournament, as long as they win at least 3 of their final 4, which I would very strongly anticipate them doing. They have home versus St. Louis, at Richmond, who's bad, at George Mason, home against St. Joe's. They should win at least 3 or 4. They win 3 or 4 of those, I think they're probably in the field.
Yeah, the thing with the VCU is that they're currently in everyone's bracketology. They should win these next 4, so they won't drop. But they probably can't move up too much at this point unless a conference tournament matchup. Yeah, I would feel very comfortable with VCU. My pick. I think I'll go with Florida. Now, Florida's a team. Quantity of loss is a concern, but they have 2 games versus the bottom. I think as long as they win those 2 this week at Vanderbilt, home Georgia, I think that they'll be able to hold on. Resume got a big boost recently with the LSU win, right? That was this week.
Yeah. Tuesday. It was Wednesday. Yeah, at LSU. That's
Wednesday. Yeah. That's what really puts them over the edge. They have at Alabama. Probably that's a bubble team, right? And then they have Ole Miss at home. Butler. So there's not a ton of depth here, but that at LSU is similar to what we were saying with Nebraska. Like if they got that at Michigan or at Michigan State, that would really kind of boost them. Florida has that comparable win on their resume with LSU.
Yeah, I mean, they just really better beat Vandy is the big thing. I mean, I watched them against Mizzou yesterday a little bit, and I was just so unimpressed. Like, they're just such an unimpressive team to watch. Their ball movement isn't very good. They just play a lot of, like, ISO. Kevon Allen just kind of chucks up shots. Jalen Hudson has been arguably the most player in the country. I just don't particularly enjoy watching them play basketball, but as long as they beat Vandy and Georgia, I mean, they should be in. So, yeah, I have no issue chalking them as in the field for our group right now.
Do you want to switch over to teams that are definitely out?
Yeah, that might make things easier. And then we can kind of like reset it and be like, here's what we have left.
Yep.
Okay. So my first team that's out that's on this list that, I just simply do not understand is UNC Greensboro. Like, look, I love Les Miller. I think he's great. I love mid-majors. I think, putting them in the field is great. I'd love to see, teams like San Francisco find their way into the NCAA tournament. Teams like UNC Greensboro, because I think they're actually a basketball team. But just like San Francisco at this point, UNC Greensboro has no case to be in the NCAA tournament. They have been 30-pieced twice by Wofford, like just completely blown out of the gym, including once at home. I mean, that's pretty inexcusable. They have no resume wins. I mean, they have someone like the SoCon, like steal Q1 because you're playing on the road against a solid team. They just don't have any win that excites me on their resume. Their net is good, not great. They're just not they're not an at-large team. They're a team that could absolutely win the conference tournament and get in. Francis Alonso's great, and James Dickey's great, and Isaiah Miller makes big shots. But like, I mean, I don't see it. I don't understand why people keep saying UNC Greensboro.
It's all the record. I mean, people love gaudy records, right? They just want to look at their bracketology and see the record next to the name, and they don't want to see 18-14. They want to see 25-6, right? That's literally all it is. And kudos to UNC Greensboro for avoiding the bad losses, but clearly outmatched by Wofford. Split with Furman is whatever, and then obviously losing at LSU, at Kentucky, it's far from a bad loss, but you need like this team could be ranked anywhere between like UNC Greensboro could be like the 26th best team in the country, or they could be like the 80th best team in the country. There's just like, based on their results, there's just such a wide range of where they could fall. And you mentioned the margin in the Wofford games is such a bad look. But if Wofford goes down in the conference tournament, I think UNC Greensboro will have a great chance to make a return appearance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they're very good. They're a very good team. Like I said, they're absolutely an excellent basketball team. They just don't have any case to make the NCAA tournament right now, in my opinion.
And I'll kind of piggyback off that with a similar team that has a similar resume but worse losses, and that's Murray State. I know people say, "Oh, we need Ja Morant in the NCAA tournament," which ironically, people last year were saying that they didn't want to see Colin Sexton and Mo Bamba because their teams are under 500 in the conference.
Or Trae Young.
We need Ja Morant. we need Ja Morant. Morant's probably a better prospect, at least a comparable prospect. But in terms of Murray State as a team, Auburn, Alabama on the road is certainly worse than LSU and Kentucky. And then they have the Belmont loss and the Jacksonville State loss, which is worse than the Wofford. So it's just a similar team. Similarly don't have any wins, and the losses are worse.
Right. I mean, they never had any wins, and they were never going to have any wins. Like, they might have stolen a quadrant 1 or 2 by like getting like Belmont on the road potentially in the conference tournament. But they're just one of those teams where they were going to have to hope their net was super high because they won a bunch of blowouts, especially that was something they were like early in conference play. They were blowing everybody out, and that made them look good. But when you've played 17 of your 25 games against quadrant 4, it's just a hard time. It's hard for me to take you seriously as like a contender. I'm sorry. Correction, 17 against out of 25 D1 games, they threw in 2 D2s for good measure. Like, I just don't see why they deserve it. I mean, if they had beaten one of Auburn and Bama, I'd at least give them a chance. I'd be like, okay, like, they have the 1 win, but they only had 2 chances. If they win if they get to the conference championship game, give them a shot. The average net of the teams they've beaten this season is 264. You just can't put that team in. I'm sorry. I love Ja Morant. I really do. I hope he wins their conference tournament. I hope he wins the conference tournament because I think Belmont has a chance. I don't even love Belmont's resume, but I think Belmont has a better chance than Murray.
Absolutely. Ready to move on for another team that's definitely out?
Yeah, let's see another out. I think St. Mary's is pretty much just no shot. The only thing that gives St. Mary's any credence is their gaudy net, and that's because Randy Bennett's teams are just incredibly efficient basketball teams. But if you look at the resume, it's not good. They have some pretty not great losses. They have a lot of total losses. I mean, they're not your typical mid-major at-large team that is just beating up on bad teams, going like 25-5 and not getting in. Like they have 3 three losses: UC Irvine, Harvard. They lost to Pepperdine, who's 175, and Ken Palm, or not Ken Palm, in net, excuse me. They have one win against Quadrant 1. That's a road win at New Mexico State. Good win. Not something that can anchor a resume. They're Gonzaga. They got beat by 50 by Gonzaga. And I understand Gonzaga is a really good basketball team. But, like, I think other than St. Mary's finding a way to beat Gonzaga, and if I'm not mistaken, they do have them left. They do. They have them at home. So if we're to beat Gonzaga, this all changes. But I don't see that happening. And so for that reason, I don't see them being in the field.
How close do you think that they would be if they beat Gonzaga?
Oof, man. I mean, you'd be talking about a team with top 40 metrics, an elite win. I think they'd probably be in especially if they lost to BYU, San Francisco, or Gonzaga in the conference tournament, they'd be okay. I'll put it that way. So they don't add a bad loss. Because if they lost to Pepperdine or something, then you're adding another bad loss, and then it becomes a bit more challenging. But I think if they beat Gonzaga, they're in.
Hard to disagree with that. Next team I'm going with is Davidson. Not really sure why they're still included. I think that's just a record thing where you need teams to fill in your next 4 outs and stuff, and Davidson is at the top of a usual top 8 conference this year. For Ken Palm, it's ranked like 13th. It's a good team, but resume speaking, it's nothing really to write home about. They have Wichita State, which is maybe in past years, certainly not this year. They have a sweep of Northeastern, which if Northeastern didn't suffer early season injuries, maybe that would mean something. And then in conference, there's nothing there. They have a loss at UMass. They have a loss at St. Joe's. That's like, why? Why are we still bringing this team up?
Yeah, they have no case. No Quadrant 1 wins. That win at home against VCU might sneak in. VCU's at 34 now on the net. Top 30 gets you a Quadrant 1, so that's a chance. I mean, I think they're a team that like in order for them to have a resume that gives you an NCAA tournament berth, they pretty much have to win the conference tournament. They have to beat like 2 of Dayton, VCU, maybe St. Louis. I think they've pretty much fallen off. I haven't looked at St. Louis's numbers, but I don't think they're good. They have to be at least 2 of those teams in order for there to be like a case. And at that point, just win the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, last year they were in a similar spot where everyone says that they're such a good team. Metrics look good. They won the conference tournament, but they absolutely needed to. And a lot of A10 fans I remember last year were saying there's no way that the A10 is not going to be a 3-bid league. Ends up coming true, right? With Davidson winning, but really that was a 2-bid league. This year a lot of A10s fans saying that there's no way that this is going to be a one big league. Definitely this is going to be a 2-bid league, and that I guarantee that VCU will lose the conference tournament, and then they'll get 2 bids and they'll say everything is fine.
Right. Counting bids is stupid if you only got one of the bids because of a bid stealer.
Yeah, defeats the purpose.
Exactly. Anywho, do we have any more we want to write off right now? Let me just take a look at teams that we could write off.
Indiana earlier, right?
Yeah. I mean, we just don't. We neither of us see them winning enough games to get there. I think it's the problem. So we'll write them off for now as an out. Any others? I want to see Dayton real quick. I mean, why don't we? I just want to talk about Dayton because I just don't off the top of my head. They've been a team that had been eliminated from at-large contention for so long in my head that maybe I'm missing something with them in their resume. So I'm pulling up their team sheet right now.
They have the neutral over Butler,
which is good, especially if you're talking about a team. If you're talking about 2 teams right down to the wire, if you have a neutral court win over them, I think it'd be very tough to leave them out. Let's see. Pulling it up. All right, we got it. Their net is 70, which is pretty terrible. I mean, comparative to other bubble teams. But that's going to be a very tough hill to get over. They have the at Davidson quadrant 1. They only have 2 wins against groups 1 and 2. Like, to me, this is a no shot if you don't win the conference tournament. I'm sorry. I like Dayton. Shout out Obi Toppin. He's fun. As a player who people should want to see in the NCAA tournament. But like that's an auto bid or bust team. I don't know about you. If you're down to elimination, but I am.
Definitely. I mean, they almost blew that Davidson game too. I was watching that game. Davidson came roaring back. There was a few questionable fouls, I think, at the end.
Yes, I was watching that as well.
But so we went to Dayton and Tulsa a few months ago. And at the time, I thought both looked, maybe they could be bubble, maybe they could be NIT. Looks like Dayton will be NIT and Tulsa won't. Which kind of an unrelated topic, but do you think that people who are fans of mid-majors and watch mostly mid-major basketball, do you think that they kind of lose perspective of like where they stand nationally? Because like watching that game, I thought both those teams were good, right? And then we like fast forward a couple months, and really they're NIT at best.
Well, I think part of it is mid-major fans watch themselves truck through games and then watch the teams they're competing against for at-large spots, battle every night, like battle with Rutgers, for instance. Like if you're a Belmont fan and you turn on Minnesota Rutgers today, you'd be like, why does Minnesota deserve to get in over us? They can't beat Rutgers on the road. Rutgers is not a great basketball team. Minnesota is just kind of struggling. Like it's tough to defend. But like if you put Belmont and Minnesota on a neutral court right now, I don't think anyone's favoring Belmont. Minnesota is bigger, stronger, more athletic, more talented. Like across the board, Belmont's just better coached. And like it's not to say that like those teams aren't good, but you just lose. I think as a mid-major fan, sometimes when you watch a ton of like MAC basketball and you see like your 6'8" center dominating, and then you turn on the Big Ten and you watch like Daniel Archuru, who's like 6'11", and he doesn't even get to play the 5 sometimes because Jordan Murphy's so good. And you're like, that guy would be a top 5 player in the MAC right now. And he doesn't, he's not even like a third. He's like the 3rd or 4th best player in Minnesota. Like that becomes like a very like sobering sight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels like the people that are so anti having a lot of losses are the people that are mid-major fans and the people that are like blue blood fans. Because like if you're a Duke fan, it's like 12 losses, like, oh my God, like what went wrong this season? But I mean, if you're playing like competitive games, you like if you're playing harder teams, you need to be able to lose more. But that was just a thought I had. When I saw, Tulsa's won a couple of games since I had this thought, but at the time they were like 10th place in the AAC, and I was like, I remember watching this team and thinking that they were pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Hey, the rants are a big part of this podcast. Don't ever sell. All right, so we've eliminated.
Dayton's out.
Do you have any others we want to eliminate before we go? Let's read off for the people who are at home and do not have this nifty spreadsheet in front of us. Let's read off the teams that we have left: Utah State, Seton Hall, Temple, Georgetown, Belmont, Alabama, Furman, Arizona State, Butler, Creighton, Minnesota, UCF, Oklahoma, NC State, Clemson, Xavier, and Lipscomb. All right. So do you want to just break down, like just kind of talk through all these teams kind of briefly and then kind of decide where we stand on them? Because like, for instance, Xavier is another team, just like Dayton, that I'd written off so long ago as an at-large team that like seeing them on the list now that they've beaten Nova, they starting to have it rolling. They're a team that's hot right now. They kind of remind me of Penn State last year, where like right now they look like a tournament team, but their overall accumulation of what they've done this season is not tournament caliber. So let's take a look at the resume real quick. Brad, any thoughts on Xavier?
So Xavier certainly looks the part right now. They had a terrible stretch earlier in the year. They lost 6 straight, but now they've won 4 straight, including at Seton Hall, home Villanova. They have Creighton at home. They just won at Providence, and then earlier in non-conference play, they had Butler and Georgetown at home. No real bad loss. I mean, I guess San Diego State on a neutral is a bad loss. Although they're another team that's playing a lot better. At Missouri was a rough one as well. But Missouri is probably good enough where that could be quadrant 2. But then the main reason why I included Xavier is going forward, they have 2 games versus St. John's and 1 at Butler. All 3 would move the needle, I think. So if they won, 2 of those games, they're 17-14, 9-9 in the league. I think that certainly deserves consideration. If they were to win all 3, I think that they'd probably be in.
Yeah, I'm gonna pour some water on that one, Brad. Just kind of looking at their resume, and they're still 2-8 against quadrant 1. Even if all 3 of those wins wound up quadrant 1, which they wouldn't, that's adding 1 to 2 quadrant 1s and a 1 or 2 quadrant 2s if they won all 3. Their net's still at 90. It's probably not getting above 70 or below 70. Excuse me. They have 3 quadrant 3 losses. The strength of schedule in the non-conference is very, very good. They're getting hot right now, but I think save a run to the Big East championship game, which they could certainly do. I don't think they really warrant at-large consideration. I would have them out.
Maybe I got a little too excited, but I mean, five quadrant 1 wins. When you compare them to some of these other bubble teams, I think that would really stand out. Because Central Florida doesn't have any, right?
True.
All right, we'll move Xavier out. I mean, even though that they are playing better, I think it's unlikely that they win all 3 of these games. So I will slide Xavier over to the out column.
Right, I think you have to have them out, but I think it's an important thing to note that they have a path. Some of these don't really have a path in my mind. For instance, other than auto bidding it, I don't think UNC Greensboro or Murray State has a path. The Xavier has a very clear path. Same with Dayton. The Xavier, though, has a path that these other teams don't have. So I think that's important to note.
Absolutely. And then I think another team that maybe we could eliminate would be Lipscomb with the recent bad loss that they took. I think it was at Florida Gulf. So they have the TCU win, which TCU was starting to kind of solidify their position a little bit more. But they were swept by Belmont, who's a comparable bubble team, I guess. And just taking this bad loss now is a bad time. Obviously, they would need to win their next 2 against NJIT and at North Alabama to still be considered. But I think that this resume is going to fall short.
Yeah, I think the big challenge is that any loss other than to Liberty in the conference championship game would be, an absolute eliminator. Because you can survive one terrible loss like a Florida Gulf Coast or an NJIT, North Florida, Stetson, those types of teams in the league. You can survive 1. You can't survive 2. And they're going to get a second unless they are losing to Liberty, who is a high net team. They're 64th. So, I mean, they split Liberty. They got swept by Belmont. They have the 2 quadrant 1 wins. I would say they're out right now. But I think, because of where the bubble's going to go, if they won out to the title game, lost to Liberty, they're going to be in the last 4 and of the first 4 out, in my book. So I would say if you want to put them out now, that's fine. But I don't think they're my next team out if we're kind of ranking these. I think I would keep them around for a little while.
Okay, yes, I will keep them around. I will put them back on the board.
All right. I saved them. I saved the Bisons. Shout out Lipscomb. All right. So do we have any other teams that we feel very good about putting in? I think Oklahoma, I feel pretty good about being in. If they're going to be over 500, their schedule was absurdly tough. They're going to have wins. They're not going to have any horrible losses. I think I feel pretty good about them at least getting an 11 seed.
Yeah, I think as long as they avoid 0-4 here in their next 4, which would include a bad loss to West Virginia, I think that they're fine. If they even if they went 1-3, I think that they're still going to be in.
Right, they're 17-10 right now against Division I. The average net of their wins is 83, which doesn't sound super high, but comparative to other teams that we've looked at, I think this is the first one in the top 100 that they're averaging. They didn't play a single quadrant 4 game, which is I think a very impressive number. They have the win at home against Wofford. Who knew scheduling that bye game would be like the key to one of the keys to their resume? That's their best win. They have that win. They have a bunch of other home wins against Texas, TCU, Creighton that are solid wins. They have the road wins at Oklahoma State, Northwestern that are two bad high major teams that will still ring up as a quadrant 2. They won at TCU. They won on neutral Florida. I think they're pretty safely in. We can pencil them in.
Cool. So we have Oklahoma.
All right.
Geez, I mean, this is where it gets tough. We have eight more teams to put in, and I'm not really confident, with any of these guys. I think this is where we kind of turn more into projecting than what they have currently on their resume. In which case, I'm gonna go with. I'll go with Seton Hall. So Seton Hall has the 2 huge wins at Maryland, neutral Kentucky from the non-conference. Currently 7-8. I think they just need one more win to kind of solidify themselves. Their remaining 3 games are at Georgetown, Marquette at home, Villanova at home, which is, one of the harder schedules left on this board. But I think all it takes would be one win, because any of these 3 wins would add value to their resume and kind of move them up a seed line. So I think that they will get one win here and get like a 10 or 11 seed.
Yeah, going against them is not a great net and an accumulation of losses. Going for them is they have 2 legitimately elite wins that just teams aren't going to be able to compare to. At Maryland is a great win. And then they have some quadrant 2s that are nice, in Big East play at home. They've done a pretty good job at home this year. Grand Canyon's top 100. They got in the non-con, same with Miami. So they got plenty of work done in the non-conference. They have the 3 Q3s that aren't good, but I think their resume stacks up fairly nicely in comparison to St. John's. St. John's is a more accumulated quadrant ones, but I think the 2 non-conference wins for Seton Hall really do a lot for me. They're in my field pretty, not fully safely, but I think they're fairly safe.
Could you have another team that you want to put in?
Oh man, I wanted to talk NC State next. Kind of interested in your thoughts. I think 32 in net is going for them certainly. Comparison to their RPI of 84, which is pretty crazy. Their whole resume is that they're unbeaten against quadrant 2s, and they have a home win against Auburn. But they have no great wins, but they blew out a bunch of teams in the non-conference, and they lost at Wake Forest, which is terrible. Looking at their schedule, NC State has remaining before tournament time. They have Wake Forest, Georgia Tech at BC. They have Wake Forest at Florida State, Georgia Tech at BC. So they have to win 3 of 4. They have to beat Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, and Boston College. And
they already beat Wake Forest.
Huh?
They already beat Wake Forest.
That's on the schedule, though. That you wrote.
They beat. Oh, Wake Forest tonight.
They're playing right now?
They played earlier and they won. So I will move that up.
Yes, they did win, but I thought I knew that. So they have a win. They need to win those other 2 games. BC, Georgia Tech, and then Florida State, kind of a house money game. That's a lock it in if you win. If they win those 2, I think they'll probably get in with their good metrics and their win total. But I don't feel great about it. I don't know what you think.
I agree. I think as long as they avoid losing to Boston College or Georgia Tech, I think that they're going to be relatively safe. Probably 10, 11 seed, kind of similar range to Seton Hall, despite kind of having kind of like the exact opposite resume, right? Where Seton Hall has the eye-catching wins. NC State does it with the metrics. The losses are concerning, specifically the Wake Forest loss. But I think as long as they get Georgia Tech and Boston College, I think they're fine. That'll put them at 10-8, and that should be good enough to get.
Yeah, completely agree. So that leaves us with how many teams? We got 13 more teams that we got to get through. How are we going to do this? All right, Brad.
Six are getting in.
Six are getting
13.
in. All right. Let's talk UCF next. I don't know. I think they're going to be in. Is my kind of consensus. Their net is going to skyrocket from beating SMU by 50 today, even though it's at home. The challenge they have is they have 3 or 4 on the road to close the regular season. They have at USF, who's been feisty, and they go to Houston, tough game, home to Cincinnati, and then they go to Temple. I think they have to win one of 3 of those final 3 to get in, to beat USF, and then to win one of 3, and then they won't be sweating too much on Selection Sunday, would be what I'll say. Because the weakness of their resume right now is they have no good wins. Like they have no quadrant ones on the season. I'm pulling up their full team sheet right now. While we're doing this, this is not an advertisement podcast because we don't make money off this yet. But Warren Nolan is seriously like the best thing ever, and very appreciative to them for putting together their team sheets for us. Makes my life easier. I'm sure it makes your life easier, Brad. That said, UCF, top 40 in net, bunch of quadrant 2 wins, most of that work done at home, Temple, Bama, Memphis, and South Florida. They have the FAU loss, which is not horrible, but it's not good. Important that one stays in the quadrant 3 range, but I think they're going to get in. I think at this point, they'll steal one of those 3. They find their way into the tournament. Even though I would love nothing more than another Johnny Dawkins NIT special.
I mean, they got screwed with their non-conference schedule. I mean, just going through it, Ryder fell on its face. St. Joe's injuries plus falling on face. Western Kentucky falling on face. Even Northern Kentucky slipped a little bit. Alabama's not as good as people thought, and that was their big win.
They built
the at Missouri isn't a great loss. Illinois State fell on its face. Temple's a little better than expected. That's obviously conference play. But then UConn, Wichita State, and SMU probably all worse than expected. So they're a victim of kind of the schedule here and kind of the macro environment. But
this was an interesting schedule, Brad. I mean, if you look at it, all these high-achieving mid-majors on paper, if you went into the season, you would expect that Georgia Southern, Western Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, maybe Cal State Fullerton, Rider, and Illinois State all to win 20 games, which would have been great for your RPI. Well, they are the RPI, regardless.
1 year off.
Johnny Dawkins, poor guy. Anyway, I think they're.
I think that they'll actually get 3 of these 4. I think they'll get South Florida, Cincy at home, and then at Temple. I think they're definitely good enough. I think that they could even be the best or second best team in this group of bubble teams. Just the resume is a big bugaboo, and I think that they'll get the wins over the next 2 weeks, which will put them in.
Yeah, no, I'll buy that. Harder every time. How about? I was looking at this resume earlier after the loss to Rutgers. Let's talk a little bit about Minnesota. Minnesota, 54 in net going into today. That'll drop because they lost to Rutgers. They have the 3 good wins. They won at Wisconsin, which is their only road win all year. They won on a neutral over Washington, and they won over Iowa. So that's 3 top 30 wins, 2 of which were not on their home court. I think that means a lot. And they have no bad losses. Their net isn't great. They haven't done anything away from home, really, except for that neutral game against Washington. Their record away from home is terrible, but their 2 best wins of the season are not at home, which is kind of a weird dynamic. Looking at the schedule, Minnesota has they just lost to Rutgers. They have to go to Northwestern. They have home to Purdue. They have at Maryland before the Big Ten tournament. I think even if they lost to Purdue and Maryland and they lost their first game in the Big Ten tournament, if they beat Northwestern on Thursday night, they're in.
Yeah. Jeez. it's just looking back. I remember watching that Boston College game, and I think people were saying that they were like some sort of jet lag after the Vancouver tournament, and that's why they lost or whatever. But between at Boston College, at Illinois, and at Rutgers, part of these road woes. I mean, those super winnable games. I mean, if you just flip those around, Minnesota is absolutely safe. It's going to be a big optics thing with the conference record and people. If they're 8-12, I'm sure people will be screaming from the rooftops. I think I tend to agree with you though. The at Wisconsin, home Iowa, neutral Washington, I think that's going to be good enough.
Right, and as long as they beat Northwestern, they should be okay. If they lose to Northwestern, they're 7-13, then they're in trouble. And Northwestern might be due for one. We'll see. They haven't won since January the 22nd. So prayers up for the Cats. But I think Minnesota, as long as they find a way, should find their way into the field.
Yeah, I think I have a team that I want to cut loose.
Okay.
I'm going to cut Creighton loose. Okay. So Creighton right now, I believe. So they have 3 games left. They have at Marquette, home Providence, home DePaul. Absolutely need Providence and DePaul, no matter what. Marquette has been playing so well, and then the game being at Marquette, I can't project them to beat them. And then the resume is really lacking. I mean, the Clemson game, which at the time you would think would be the big resume kind of booster there, that's nothing. And they have at Georgetown's the second best win, I think. So without that at Marquette win, they're not dancing, and I don't think that they're going to get it.
Yeah, I think they need to win games. I'm fine with this elimination. I think at Marquette is not. They're not going to win it, as you said, and without that, they're not going to get anything out of beating Providence or DePaul at home. So yeah, I mean, they'll be 16-14 going into in D1 games, going into conference tournament season with their the hallmark of what their resume is we played a lot of good teams, but they didn't even play a hugely difficult schedule in terms of great teams. They just played a lot of not bad teams. Even their early season tournament was Georgia State, Boise State, and Clemson. They played Montana at home, who's good. They played ETSU at home, who's good. They played Ohio State in the non-conference. Then Gonzaga is obviously a resume game, but they really just made a living on Nebraska as well. They played a lot of okay teams, and I think that makes their SOS look good. But it's not like they came away with anything of substance from it. So I'm fine with the cut.
Yeah, I mean, if they could have pulled off the home game versus Gonzaga, which I think that they were leading at the half, I mean that would really put them in. Another team, let's see. Who should we either cut or put in?
A team that I am leaning towards cutting right now is Alabama, and you can jump in here. Part of this is more based upon projection. I don't think they're going to beat LSU or Auburn at home, and I think they'll split South Carolina and Arkansas on the road, and 1-3 is not going to do it. I'm not even sure 2-2 will do it. They're basically the same team as last year. The Kentucky win at home is great. Mississippi State at home is very good. My thing is, if they're 0-7 against Quadrant 1 on the road, they haven't done anything on the road really. The best wins on the road this season on the road are Missouri and Vanderbilt, and they won at Stephen F. Austin, who's 305 in there. So they've done nothing on the road. They're benefited by some of these mid-major teams being good, like Northeastern's a Quadrant 2, Liberty's a Quadrant 2, Penn State wound up being a Quadrant 2, Murray State as well. But I think for me, just they have the bad loss to Georgia State, which isn't horrible, but it's not good. They're a team that I'm okay with cutting if you're okay with cutting.
Yeah, because even the road games that they have remaining at Arkansas and at South Carolina, certainly no sure thing. They have some bad losses. They were swept by Texas A&M. I'm willing to cut Alabama, which is a disgrace, for this team to not make the NCAA tournament, given their talent and given the state of the bubble.
Mm-hmm. All right. This is getting to tough cut time. Here's my challenge: is I think the resume of Lipscomb is better than the resume of Belmont between numbers and then like the great win. But at the same time, Belmont has 2 head-to-head wins. They have a good enough resume with the exception of that horrible Green Bay loss and the 2 losses to Jacksonville State. Whew. I mean, I think it's almost like you have to cut both if you're going to cut one.
I think it's safe to cut both.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. That puts both basically in the last 5 out, which is pretty much where I would put them, right?
And then with historical context too, these types of resumes, Lipscomb at least has the good win, but we've seen with your Middle Tennessees and your Illinois States and stuff that it's not in their favor historically. Maybe the committee has heard the backlash and is willing to change, but I think for now, I think it's a safe pick. And then also, I think I want to cut Furman as well. The win against Villanova is kind of depreciating in value as Villanova's lost 4 or 5, and they have a bad loss against Samford at home. And then they beat East Tennessee and UNC Greensboro at home, which are nice, but they didn't get a piece of Wofford. And they played, by my count, at least 3 non-D1 teams in the non-con, so they had a weak non-con as well. I think Furman can be cut loose.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Their resume is literally just we beat Villanova. Like, they played 15 Quadrant 4 games. They're 1-5 against Quadrant 1 with the 1-1 beating Nova. They've lost all the other road games, and the home game against Wofford. I think their at-large hope was beating Wofford on Saturday. That's gone. Now they got to win the conference tournament. I'm fine with that. I think, honestly, if we were ranking them looking back, I think I would take Lipscomb and Belmont over Furman. We just kind of got into the debate of those, so we left Furman out there. Their net isn't even that good either. 48, good, but it's not like any better than Belmont or Lipscomb.
All right, so for a reset now, we have 6. So we have 6 teams left. 4 are going to be in, 2 are going to be out. The teams are Utah State, Temple, Georgetown, Butler, Clemson, and that's it. And yeah, Clemson, Butler, Arizona State, Georgetown, Temple, and Utah State.
Okay. I would say if we're cutting one of these teams, let's kind of do it like The Bachelor. We're cutting one at a time. I want to cut. I really do want to cut Arizona State because they have they have 3 pretty bad losses. 1 Q3, 2 Q4s. All three of those home. Their benefit is they have the great wins. They have home against Kansas, home against Washington, neutrals against Mississippi State and Washington and Utah State. Excuse me. Closing stretch: Cal, Oregon State, Arizona. So 3 or 4 on the road. Those final 3 are on the road, and Cal at home, which they beat Cal today, so that's gone. So that's just Oregon State, Oregon, and Arizona. I think the numbers are going to hurt them here, combined with the bad losses. To me, they're going to get left out, although the committee does love their good wins. The problem is they can't really get anything of substance the rest of the way. Beating Oregon, I don't even think would be a quadrant 1. It would be right now by the skin of its teeth. 74 right now, so a chance they could steal another quadrant 1. But I think I would keep them out. But I don't know about you.
I'm leaning in.
Okay.
You mentioned the good wins. I think maybe we hold off on Arizona State. Maybe even as our last team discussed. I think I think I want to cut Butler. So they have the neutral court win over Florida, which is looking better. They have Ole Miss, but they have the neutral court loss to Dayton, which is I guess another bubble team. At St. Louis is not a good loss. Best win. So besides Florida and Ole Miss, looking at their conference slate, best win is at Georgetown or home St. John's. They split with both. So there's just nothing really here that really stands out. This is a team that we probably should just flip a coin with Butler, but I think I'm leaning out here. I think that they lack kind of the substance of some of the other bubble teams.
I mean, I think we've gotten to the point where none of these teams have good enough wins other than Arizona State, but they also have done a better job of avoiding the terrible losses again, except for Arizona State. So I mean, I think Butler's net kind of keeps them around. They have a couple of quadrant one wins. They have two. God, it's very tough. I mean, I guess the question is let's compare them to Clemson. And I'm not saying that both couldn't be in, but let's compare what they exactly have to the Clemson resume. Clemson right now is 43rd in net, so they're 6 spots higher than Butler. They have more total wins. They have a worse record against quadrant one. They're 1-8. They're 3-3 against quadrant two, so they're better against quadrant two in terms of percentage, and they have no bad losses. If you're comparing those two teams, why don't we put one of these two in right now? Who would you put in, Butler or Clemson?
I think I'm going to turn to the projection here. So Clemson has 2 that they can't lose, right? They can't lose to Pitt or Notre Dame. But those are the 2 road games, and then they have UNC and Syracuse at home. I think Butler has the easier remaining schedule, but Clemson has a better opportunity to add substance.
Right. I kind of feel like it's 3 or 4. I really do think they probably beat Syracuse at home.
I agree. So let's put Clemson in.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
But we can't put Butler out yet.
No, we'll keep Butler on the bubble. All right.
Yes.
Georgetown, because they're a team that kind of hopped in when they beat Villanova, and then everyone started beating Villanova. So I kind of want to look at the resume here. I mean, they're an exciting team with young guys who can score the basketball, but the numbers are not good. 73rd in the net. The strength of schedule is not good. They're at home, so they only have one win that really carries water for a resume. And then they have the 2 bad losses against SMU and Loyola Marymount.
Cut them.
The loss isn't very good. I'm happy to cut them.
Yeah, Georgetown's done.
They probably shouldn't have made it, honestly.
I mean, because they've been popping up right around the cut line. I've seen a few people have them in. The Illinois win is on the road has gained some equity. Liberty's a nice win at Butler's a road, but they split with Butler and each took each other's road win. They have a split with St. John's, but I mean, there's just not unless they won. I think the remaining 4, which they have 2 versus DePaul, home Seton Hall, at Marquette. I think that they're not going to win all 4 of those. I think that they're done. I think Georgetown's going to the NIT.
If they beat Nova or Marquette once the rest of the way, but didn't get the auto bid, would they be in?
So
let's say they win 3 or 4 here, beat DePaul, beat Seton.
So they're 9-9. That probably puts them. We'll say first round game versus either Butler or Seton Hall.
Yeah, they win,
or maybe St. John's, but
they win that game. They then get Marquette or Villanova. They win it again. They go to the championship game and they lose. In, probably.
Yeah, because
it's going to happen. I don't think
because they would get that first round game would be either neutral Seton Hall, neutral Butler, or road St. John's.
Fringe, yeah, fringe quadrant ones.
So yeah, they're done.
Let's bounce them.
All right, so the reset. We have 4 teams left. 3 are in. 1 is out. We have Utah State. We have Temple. We have Arizona State, and we have Butler.
Okay. Let's look at Temple and Utah State. Temple is getting the media buzz. Got to get Fran Dunphy into the tournament, is what everyone says. But the resume is not great. It's not terrible. The win over Houston is very nice, especially at home. I mean, Houston doesn't have the name recognition that some of the other teams do, but they are like a legitimately excellent basketball team that's going to get a top 3 seed. So that will certainly help. Help matters. They have the bad loss to Penn, which isn't terrible, but it's not good. The rest of the way, they have a trip to Memphis, which would be very tough, but that would be a potential quadrant 1 game. They have to beat Tulane. They have at UConn, at UCF, excuse me, to close the year. That'll be an interesting game. So, I think if they can win one of Memphis and UCF and then win their first game in the conference tournament, Temple will get in if that happens.
I think that they definitely need the at Memphis.
Really?
And obviously the Tulane in the UConn. That Houston win is good. I mean, if they just avoided that Penn loss, I think that they'd be sitting in a pretty nice spot. Jeez. No. It's the cut line is just so impossible. And watch all this fine work get washed away by a few bid thieves. The thing is, their first round game, they'll be the 3 seed, so they'll get the winner of like East Carolina and Memphis or something.
Okay, so let's compare what they have to Utah State. Utah State has better metrics because they're top 40 right now. They still get a chance to play Nevada, which would be ginormous. If they beat Nevada at home, I mean they're probably in, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
That would push them in almost without a doubt. They have the quadrant 1 win over St. Mary's, which is nice. They have one thing not going for them in that they lost to Arizona State, another team that we have as like Final 6 group, or Final 4 now. Final 4 on a neutral, they lost that game. They have okay wins against Fresno and UC Irvine. So this is the quintessential resume that lacks wins, but has enough good wins to put themselves right in the mix. I guess the question is how are we simming Nevada? Because I think if they won out the regular season, even if they lost to a bad team in the conference tournament, I think they're probably in. I think the weight of beating Nevada would be so strong because it's like a clear NCAA tournament team win that they could lose to like almost anyone in the Mountain West and it'd be okay.
Okay, look, I agree. I think that they beat Nevada at home, Nevada, and get in. So now we have 3 teams. We have Temple, Arizona State, and Butler. Oh my God.
One. Why don't we just choose who we're cutting, and then we can put the other 2 in? Temple, Arizona State, Butler. So let's summarize the cases for each team in about 10 seconds. So Arizona State, 4 great wins, or 4 quadrant 1s, multiple great wins, 3 bad losses. Butler, lacking great wins, no bad losses, no horrible losses. St. Louis on the road is not good. And okay metrics. Arizona State has the worst metrics of the group. Temple, okay metrics, but they have one great win over Houston and then 1 not good loss against Penn. Who do you cut?
It's going to come down to the simulation. I think Arizona State's in. I think historically the good wins hold hold the weight. Let's put them in.
I was going to say the same.
What record do you think that they need in these final 3 games, all on the road? Do you think that they can go 2-1 and be fine?
Arizona State.
Yeah. At Oregon State, at Arizona.
Am I crazy to think they could go 1-2 and be okay?
No, because road games. The
resume, regardless, Brad, is based on great wins, not like bad losses. It's
very true.
Great wins and bad losses. Like, the bad losses are still going to be there. These losses won't be worse than what they have because they're road wins. They're road games, especially. I mean, the wins can only help them. The losses aren't going to hurt them too much. Would be my point.
I agree. Arizona State's in. That's going down to Butler and Temple, last spot. Jeez. It could come down to Providence in a 50-48 game.
I'm going to go with – why don't we each vote? So my vote is Temple. I think that elite win over Houston should hold weight. And the fact that it doesn't hold more weight kind of speaks to the non-voiced biases against non-high major and brand name programs. Because Houston's number 4 in net. If they had a home win over Michigan, who's not a top 10 net team, I think Temple would be seen a lot more kindly than they are with their win over Houston. I'm going to put in Temple. I also think they might get a little bump from the Fran Dunphy thing.
I agree because I think Butler's going to drop 2 of these games in their remaining 4, and I think Temple's going to go at least 3-1. And the Houston game, the longer we go in this podcast, just seems more impressive compared to the at Georgetown, St. John's at home, Ole Miss, Florida kind of mishmash there, especially because they have the home win, they have the win at Georgetown, and then they have the home loss to Georgetown, I think, too, right? So those kind of cancel each other out. I'll go with Temple in, Butler out.
Yeah. All right. So we got it. We did it. We got 15 in. It took a really long time. It was a lot of fun. I hope we appreciate all of y'all who stuck by. Any kind of takeaways from this process? I think, for me, it didn't come out especially different than I would have expected it would in my head. I mean, I think that bottom 4 group is especially is going to be feeling the heat from potential bid thieves in the MAC, in the SoCon, in potentially Mountain West, depending on what you would consider. Utah State, San Diego State could win that league. They're playing really good basketball right now. Some other potential bid thieves. So that'll be interesting to watch. I think the bubble came out exactly as I had expected. The teams that have just avoided the bad losses like the plague are in a good spot.
Definitely. And then in terms of the bid thieves, how many bid thieves do you think we need for this bubble to be normal instead of horrible? You think if we trimmed 4 off, it would be normal? If our last 4 was Minnesota, Central Florida, NC State, and Seton Hall, that doesn't seem any different than past bubbles to me. So maybe 4 there is the magic number.
Yeah, that would help. That would certainly help. I think 3 even. Even if you just got it to Clemson as the last team in, I'd be okay with.
Cool. So
I have an issue with Utah State because I'm a big Craig Smith guy. But
Arizona State is certainly good enough. They're right. And Temple is the one that's probably more of an NIT team in most years, but they could end up 13-5 and 23-7. So
Arizona State, no one to blame but themselves. If they don't get in, it is squarely on them for just flat out not showing up sometimes. And I'm sorry, but you just do not have a case to be angry at the committee when you don't get in, when you got 20-pieced by Washington State at home. I'm sorry, you just don't have a case. You just got to show up. And you can't blame your student section for not coming, Bobby Hurley. I'm sorry. You just can't get blown out by a bad Washington State team and hope to dance. So If they get cut, that's why. And I'm okay with that, honestly.
Yeah, it's like the people for the Providence games that say, "Oh, like the crowd was involved. It was like a morgue." Like, well, you haven't scored in 7 minutes. What is there to cheer about? We have not made a shot in 7 minutes. So sometimes we have 2 of those a game, 3 of those a game, 7-minute stretches without a basket. But
hey, welcome to Siena basketball.
Fans fault.
Siena's 15 and 14 now. They're rolling 15 and 14. Yeah, 15 and 14. Headed out west next weekend with a chance to win it. So despite the Cats being down, I've got something to root for. Go Saints. Brad, unfortunately, has not much to root for until conference tournament season. Go Friars anyway. Thanks for listening, guys. We really appreciate you sticking in. Sorry about the 2-week delay. We'll have you back hopefully next weekend. I see no reason why we wouldn't. Please, as always, rate, subscribe, do whatever you can to help us get this podcast out there. We always do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Have a great night. And next time we speak to you, it'll be Mark. So look forward to that.